Hey y'all, it's another episode of Because I've Healed. And of course, per usual, I'm really excited that you are here and that you are tuning in. This week, I'm going to talk to you about what is your intuition and how to recognize and trust your inner voice. Now, there's a trend going on right now, and maybe it's more than a trend. Maybe it's really a movement back to our ancestral practices, back to getting to know ourselves, back to trusting ourselves in a divestment from political leaders and the religion that they have associated with leadership. Dare I say, it might be a little convoluted, but anyway, nevertheless, there's a movement, especially for Black and Brown folks, to get back to our cultural roots and our cultural practices. And one of those things is being able to listen to and trust and then take action on our intuition. But how many people really take the time to explain what your intuition is? So I thought I would start at the beginning and break down what is intuition so then you can learn how to use it to your advantage and build a whole life for yourself based on what you have learned and based on connecting to yourself. So right after the intro, I will get right back to you and I will break it all down. Welcome to Because I've Healed, the podcast where we talk about shaking the chains of expectations placed on us by the world. My name is Asha Wilkerson, and I'm a former high achieving attorney and college professor turned healing focused life coach for Black women. Each week, I'm bringing you a life lesson that started with healing. Not only will I explain the chains I was able to break, but also the success I experienced after. Let's get to healing. All right, so let's talk about what intuition really is. In my opinion, based on the resources and texts I've read, based on the teachers I've had, based on my own just kind of knowing and synthesis of information, intuition is the ability to perceive the information around you. And a lot of that information comes in the form of energy. So we are used to seeing things like this tangible coffee cup, the mouse for my computer. These things are made up of energy, but there's also other things that we cannot see or perceive with our naked eye that is made up of energy. And our intuition is really being able to perceive or to observe or to tune in to all of the information around us, whether it is seen or unseen. It's the ability to know what's going on. And the reason why it gets kind of a bad rap is because you can't see it with your own eyes. So oftentimes it's hard to prove that your intuition is correct, or it's hard to prove that your intuition is right until after the fact when you followed your intuition and it's correct. Also, I think as kids, we get socialized a lot out of using our intuition because as kids, we put things together, we perceive things, we know what's going on, between between our parents' friends, with teachers, the adults in our lives, and we know something is not right, but because they're not ready to tell us or they don't want us to know, we're taught, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. That didn't really happen. And so we have been socialized out of trusting our inner knowing and ourselves, which is really our intuition. So let me tell you how your intuition shows up for you so you can begin to recognize it. In the energetic world, there's a lot of talk about the Clair senses. So for each sense that you have, whether it's smell, taste, sight, hearing, touch, there's a Clair sense, which is the ability to perceive the information around you through that sense. So there is Clair audience, which is when you hear things. Now, that may show up as you hear someone whisper, or you hear your grandfather's voice who passed away, or you hear just a voice from out there that's telling you what to do or what not to do, or that this is a lie, or this is the truth, or to pick this lottery number, right? It could be any of that. Clairaudience can also show up if you are hearing a song with some lyrics. I think I gave the example a couple months ago when I was trying to figure out if I should continue dating this guy or not. And this song popped into my head. It's a Cuban salsa song that I love, and it says, No vale la pena, no vale la pena, no. And it means it's not worth it. It's not worth it. No. And I wasn't thinking about that song. I hadn't heard that song in months, and it just popped up. No vale la pena, no. I was like, oh my God. clear message, right? So that's clairaudience, where you hear things. There's clairvoyance, when you see things. Now, some people see images or they see colors, or maybe they see things play out like on a movie screen, and that gives them information. So it could be things from the past that you weren't present at, or it could be a scene that unfolds in the future, or a reader of mine. I've taken a number of her programs and worked with her one-on-one. She sees things. So it might be like, I'm seeing a lion right now, and a lion to me means courageous and go after what you want, right? The symbols that you see, if you see symbols, are um, relevant to you. So we might see the same lion, but it has a different interpretation, which could be a different message. Or I might be seeing something for courage. You see a lion, and I see, I don't know, a knight or something like that. I don't know why knight popped into my head, but it's the best I got right now. So that's clairvoyance, where you see things. Now there's clairsentience. This is where you feel things. This is a sense that's really, really big for me. When I'm doing readings for people, I will feel tingling sensations, or cramping sensations, or excited sensations in different parts of my body that can be linked, whether it's to the chakra and like what the chakra represents, or maybe it's literally in a part of my body where like I felt tingling in my hand, and I'm like, are you writing, or is there some pain? And sometimes people have said, yeah, that's exactly it. I've been writing, and there's some pain that's happening there. Claircognizance is also another strength of mine. Claircognizance is when you just know something. Just some information drops down into your knowing. You're not even sure how you knew that or why you knew it. It doesn't um, come from any particular place that you can pinpoint. It might show up as a voice, but maybe not. It's just like a thought that you had, and you're like, why was I even thinking that? How would I even know that? That's the claircognizance. It's just the knowing. There's also a few more. There's clairtangency and clairempathy. Clairtangency is when you put your hands on an object, you touch something, and you get information from it. I did an intuitive reader retreat. So it was the level 2 after my intuitive reader certification. And we had to touch different objects. And this was to practice our clair senses and our intuiting. We had to touch different objects and see what information came to us from those objects. So if you touch certain things and you feel like, okay, I'm feeling a whole story here, or there's some words that pop up, or there's some feelings that pop up, that's being able to perceive the information through touch, which is called clairtangency. And then clairempathy is another big one, where you feel other people's emotions. We call that, we could be a highly sensitive person. You could just be really empathetic or empathic. That's where you are able to feel and sense other people's emotions. I actually did, I was kind of embarrassed, but I did a sales call the other day. And after the person told me their situation, their story, I just started crying, and I was so embarrassed. I'm like, I'm supposed to be leading this meeting, and here I am on a sales call crying. But I felt every single emotion that she had described and talked about, even the ones that she didn't say with her voice. I felt them in my body. And the tears that came out were like a release, not of my own emotions. It wasn't sadness, or it wasn't even really sadness. It was all of the emotions that just expressed themselves through tears, but it wasn't my emotion that I was feeling. It was her emotion that I was feeling. And I have done that a couple times on calls before, where I'm feeling something and it'll come through as tears or come through as anxiety, but I'm very aware that it's not my own emotion that I'm feeling, it's the emotion for the other person. So for all the senses that you have, there's a clair sense that can be associated with it. So those are the different channels through which, those are some of the different channels through which you can perceive information. So now that you have an idea of how your intuition can speak to you, again, your intuition being your ability to perceive the energy and information around you, let's talk about how you begin to recognize that it is your intuition and not something else. The first way is that most of the information you get will be kind of matter of fact, especially if it's claircognizance. When I know something intuitively, it doesn't have an emotion associated with it. It's not, um, It's not a back and forth, a should I, shouldn't I, what will I, how can I? It's like very factual. It just seems straightforward, and it might be a decision or a direction to do a thing or to not do a thing, but it's not going to be emotional. It's going to be just very factual. And then the second way, I already just said it, but it doesn't come with shoulds or shouldn'ts or this is how you're supposed to. It doesn't have any of that judgment that is associated with it. It just turns into kind of like a knowing that it's unemotional and it's a knowing. There's no guilt or other sort of emotion that's associated with it. So if you're thinking, oh, my intuition is telling me that I should do this, that's probably not your intuition. You will just know intuitively whether this is for you or not for you, whether you should go left or right. There isn't this hoopla around it. One of the things that I've noticed about myself in the last year is that I call myself an overthinker, and I am an overthinker. But I started to recognize that when I overthink and when I spin out and go back and forth with myself, it's because I'm not listening to my intuition. And I know that there's something, my intuition has spoken to me, and I'm not ready to listen to it. So then I use my logic brain to go back and forth with myself. So my spinning out and going back and forth is my cue now that I'm not paying attention to my intuition. And then I can sort of get quiet and just tap into what it is telling me to do. And all of this noise and this overthinking just goes by the wayside because that's the way that I'm justifying to myself what maybe I actually want to do when my intuition is telling me something different. Or maybe it's I don't trust the message from my intuition. So I'm trying to logic my way into an answer. You can also recognize your intuition because it will show up as confirmation. So I tell people that I work with who are building the trust in their intuition, ask your intuition to give you a sign. A client of mine, we're working together in the group program. She said she's been practicing trusting her intuition just while she's going on walks in her neighborhood. And so she will ask, okay, what path should I walk down? And she'll get a sign or a message to go this way or that way. She's not overthinking it. And she said while she was on that path, she heard a wind chime and she thought, oh, I wonder if those are my ancestors. Then she walked another couple of minutes and she heard another wind chime and it felt like confirmation that, yeah, they're around her and they're walking with her. And she asked to get more messages from her intuition and from her ancestors. And so they show up in little ways. Other people, or lots of people, actually will see repeating numbers. You might see a particular bird, like a hummingbird, that reminds you of an ancestor. My dad used to raise homing pigeons and used to race them. But there are way too many pigeons in this world for those to be a sign from my dad. So I've decided that is not a sign from my father because my father would be everywhere and these pigeons are quite annoying. So I'm not claiming that as his representative. My dad passed away a few years ago, so sometimes I do look for signs, but your intuition will confirm for you, particularly if you are asking for a sign. It could even be that, I want to know, Grandma, that you were here, so show me a penny. And then you'll be surprised. You'll actually see a penny. It might not show up that day, but it might show up the next day or within the next week. So you can ask for confirmation and you will know. Your intuition will not take on the voice of your mother. It will not give you the advice of your father. It will not have shoulds and shouldn'ts. And so it won't sound like anybody that you know in your life right now. It'll be an independent sounding voice that is not emotional. It'll be a knowing that drops in. And then your job after recognizing it is to learn to trust it. Now, this is where we can work together. In my intuitive connection group program, I'm changing the name of the program. I haven't decided what it's going to be just yet, but it's the same one that I just launched for this January, where we are working together to understand how our intuition speaks to us as individuals, to build that trust with our intuition, and then to use our intuition as a gateway into making contact with our ancestors and perceiving messages. For me, I started with my intuition first, and that really allowed me to open the door to have that ancestral connection. I don't know that I would have been able to do that, to connect with my ancestors if I hadn't developed my intuition first. So that's a good way to go. It's not the only way to go, but it's a good way to go. This group program meets 12 weeks, just 3 months. And the first 2 meetings of the month are educational and workshop type programs. So I'm going to be teaching you what I know, and we're going to actually practice getting to know your intuition, putting practices into place so you can strengthen that connection. And then the third week will be a breath work or a somatic session. So it might be meditation and breath work together. It might be meditation and Reiki, it might be breath work by itself or breath work and Reiki, so that you can just relax, take care of yourself, and allow all the hard work that you've been putting in to sink in. Then we'll take a week off. And then we'll repeat the same pattern for the next 2 months. This group is getting ready to launch again with a start date in April. The doors will open in March. And I would love for you to be a part of this program. More than just working on it as an individual, you're going to build community. Because one of the things that also happens too when you start down this road, or when you get a little more serious about this road, is that you realize not everyone understands you. And so it is very important to build community so you can continue to grow in your own practice. So make sure you get on my email list so that you can be the first to know when I am opening the doors to the program. And if you are on my email list, you will be able to take advantage of the early bird for email list only options that are available. And then you can also become an affiliate if you want to share it with your friends and your family, if you want them to join on this journey with you together. About that, my mom is a very intuitive person. She used to be all into the spiritual woo-woo stuff. She said, "Oh, Asha, oh, honey, you remind me of myself when I was your age." I'm like, okay. Because when I grew up, she had kind of put that stuff to the side. But we ended up taking an intuitive reader course together. And it was so fun to be in there with my mom and to be developing this together. And she was like light years ahead of me. And it's something that actually still bonds us today. So if you are thinking that maybe there's a sister or an auntie or a mother that you want to do this with, that you want to embark on this intuitive connection and also this ancestral healing journey together with, definitely tell them about it, particularly when doors open so you all can join together. All right. There is info about how to connect with me in the show notes. Leave me a message. Let me know what you think about this episode on Instagram. My handle over there is Asha Wilkerson ESQ. And definitely join that email list so you can get updates on how to connect with your intuition, but also about the program as it starts. All right. I will talk to you soon. Love you all. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will see you here next time. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. The best way to keep in touch is to go to my website, ashawilkerson.com, and join my email list. If you'd like more information about this episode that you just listened to, head to the show notes and you'll find all the details and all the links. See you next week.